It was unavoidable. 200 million years ago, beneath these turbulent waters, the floor of the Pacific Ocean collided with the North American continent. From this mighty impact, coastal mountain ranges surfaced, while further inland, volcanic peaks emerged, spewing forth cascades of fiery lava, enough to fill an inland sea, and for the first time creating dry land. Then it got cold. Massive glaciers held the raw landscape in an icy grip. When they eventually retreated, the earth was scoured, gouged and reshaped into a monumental sculpture of mountains and valleys, plateaus and deserts, gorges, waterways, and canyons. As the earth building slowed, the climate moderated and life began to flourish. Finally, humans arrived on the scene. Looking upon this creation of fire and ice, this rich and abundant land, they must have been filled with a sense of awe, transported to a state of wonder. Today, Oregon remains an unspoiled state of wonder, offering myriad pleasures for the curious and adventurous alike. At 97,000 square miles, Oregon is the 10th largest state in the Union. It is bordered on the north by the Columbia River and the state of Washington. To the east lie Idaho and the Snake River. To the south, California and Nevada. And its western boundary is defined by the magnificent Pacific Ocean. The Cascade Mountain Range forms the backbone of the state, and the valley just west of these volcanic peaks is home to roughly 2/3 of the state's 2.7 million inhabitants. The lush green Willamette Valley was the destination of many pioneers as they concluded their arduous journey along the Oregon Trail. And one of the valley's biggest advocates was the superintendent of the Hudson Bay Company at Fort Vancouver. His name was Dr. John McLaughlin, and this was the house he built. Today, this historic home is open to visitors who come to Oregon City, the first incorporated city in Oregon and the original capital of the vast Oregon Territory. Inside this lovingly restored home, most of the furnishings are original, dating back to the late 1700s and early 1800s. They were originally brought from England around Cape Horn and include many of the doctor's personal articles. Because it was the only form of government west of the Rockies in the 1840s, there is much history in Oregon City. For example, the original plat for the city of San Francisco is on display at the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center. Many pioneer artifacts and other historical remnants of the Western migration are also showcased in this fascinating museum. Oregon City may also be the only city in the United States with a vertical street. A municipal elevator transports passengers between the lower and upper levels of town. At the upper level, a glass-enclosed area provides views of the business district and the Willamette River, the secret of Oregon City's initial success. For not far away are the Falls of the Willamette, a natural source of power. Here, the very first building in the Willamette Valley, a sawmill, was built on the recommendation of Dr. John McLaughlin in 1828. It's no wonder he's known as the Father of Oregon. Across the river and further down the Willamette Valley, winding roads traverse rolling hills and pass by rich farmland that first attracted the pioneers. Today, this land still produces an abundance of crops. The fields are studded with filbert and fruit orchards, berry patches and vegetable gardens, wheat fields, and the newest Oregon cash crop, grapes. Oregon boasts a wine industry that, while still small by California standards, is acquiring a growing international reputation. Many vineyards are located in the Yamhill County district of the Willamette Valley, with names like Erie, Tualatin, Adlersheim, and so-called Blosser, each producing its own specialty, and each exuding its own special charm. Most offer wine tours and tastings. Further down the valley, Shampooey Park marks a site of historical importance to the state of Oregon and the nation. Meetings held here in 1843 by members of the Willamette settlement led to the formation of the first American Commonwealth on the Pacific coast by a slim vote of 52 to 50. This was followed by territorial status in 1848 and statehood in 1859. Amid the rolling hills and greenways of the park, the Shampooey Historical Pageant is performed annually, dramatizing these events of independence. At the heart of the Willamette Valley lies Salem, capital of Oregon. The white marble Capitol building, topped fittingly enough with a 24-foot gold leaf statue of a pioneer, invites exploration of its inner recesses. Capitol tours are scheduled daily from June through August. The magnificent rotunda with the state seal embedded in the floor and colorful murals depicting Oregon history adorning the walls provides a fitting centerpiece. For the more adventurous, a 121-step climb to the top of the tower rewards with a splendid view of Salem, the surrounding countryside, and the distant mountains. Just east of the Capitol, the park-like setting of Mission Mill Village provides another look into Oregon's past. Many historic buildings, some occupied by Methodist missionaries who first settled the area back in the 1830s, have been renovated and are open for viewing. But the dominant features of Mission Mill Village is a totally restored textile mill that dates back to the 1890s. Interpretive exhibits and working equipment demonstrate how wool was processed during the turn of the century. Begun by one Thomas Kay, this mill proved to be a harbinger of things to come. For from this heritage sprang the famous Pendleton Woolen Mills and the birth of the textile industry in Oregon. About 30 miles east of the urban bustle of Salem is a place of peace and solitude, of wooded canyons and exquisite waterfalls. Silver Falls is Oregon's largest state park. It features picnicking and swimming areas, miles of bicycle, horse, and hiking trails, and overnight camping. But the biggest attraction at Silver Falls are its plentiful waterfalls. A 7-mile loop trail over Silver Creek Canyon passes by dozens of them, each a unique, refreshing experience. Beyond Silver Falls, further down the Willamette Valley, lies the Albany-Corvallis area. These two cities form the hub of Oregon's large grass seed industry. The seed for most northern climate lawns was in all probability grown right here. Victorian architecture also permeates the area, with Albany boasting 3 separate National Historic Districts and over 350 houses and buildings dating from the 1840s. Corvallis has some interesting architecture of its own in the Benton County Courthouse, but it's also home of Oregon State University, a Pac-10 school, which in turn is home to some 15,000 students. The back roads of Lynn County invite leisurely exploration of their picture-perfect rural beauty, all the more enhanced by numerous covered bridges. Oregon covered bridges represent the largest concentration of these nostalgic structures west of the Mississippi. In addition to their inherent beauty, the roofs served a more utilitarian purpose. They protected the trusses and plank decking from the elements, enhancing their longevity, an important consideration during Oregon's notoriously wet winters. The wood in these bridges came from Oregon's vast forests, covering nearly half of the state's 60 million acres of land. From western hemlock and Sitka spruce in dense coastal rainforests, to thick cascade stands of Douglas fir, to tall specimens of ponderosa pine east of the mountains. Wood products have long been the traditional economic base of the state. Many of the huge trees cut in the Cascade and Coast Ranges are brought to Eugene, the center of Oregon's timber industry and the state's second largest city. Here the logs are processed into lumber, plywood, paper, and other forest products. But Eugene is also known as the track capital of the world. Sometimes it seems like everyone is running, from casual joggers to members of the University of Oregon's teams to internationally recognized track stars. The city's wonderful system of traffic-free jogging and bicycle trails, combined with those located on the 250 acres of the University of Oregon campus, to comprise a network of paths more than 150 miles long. Downtown Eugene boasts the Holt Center for the Performing Arts. This superb entertainment complex is the home to concerts, ballet, opera, and other cultural performances year-round. Each summer, it hosts the renowned Oregon Bach Festival. Every Saturday, also downtown, another Eugene tradition flourishes, the Saturday Market. This outdoor bazaar features arts, crafts, food, strolling minstrels, and other entertainment. One never knows what to expect at this weekly celebration, and that's part of its appeal. Shortly beyond the urban boundaries of Eugene are some of Oregon's finest scenic attractions and most splendid countryside. The McKenzie River Highway east of town follows its surging namesake past resort communities and towards its source in the Cascades. Beautiful waterfalls with names like Chehalis, Coosa, Tumalich beckon from roadside pullouts along the way. Further up the highway, near its junction with US 20 and the Santiam Pass, sits Clear Lake. This large body of water was formed about 3,000 years ago when lava from the Cascade volcanoes dammed the McKenzie. The icy waters quickly filled the valley behind this natural barricade and completely covered a forest. Today, these trees rise up ghost-like from the lake bottom, preserved by the clear, cold, mineral-free waters. Another road also heads east from the McKenzie River Highway, Oregon 242. This steep, winding, hairpin-curved passage threads its way through dense forests of Douglas fir and vine maple, beargrass and ferns, past wispy waterfalls and high cascade lakes on its way to McKenzie Pass. Volcanic peaks poke at the clouds around each new bend of this spectacular road, a road that demands a leisurely pace, a road to be enjoyed for the sheer pleasure of it all. The summit of desolate McKenzie Pass at 5,342 feet, the highest in Oregon, is also the site of a huge lava flow. A paved interpretive trail meanders through a landscape so barren it was once used to train astronauts for moon missions. D. Wright Observatory sits atop this once liquid rock, offering 11 windows on 11 separate Cascade peaks. Gazing at these high mountains with names like Jefferson and Washington, the Three Sisters, Broken Top, and Three-Fingered Jack, it suddenly becomes obvious that somewhere an invisible line has been crossed, and Central Oregon awaits. Unparalleled in its sheer variety, dazzling scenery, and quiet beauty, Central Oregon typifies the great outdoors. It begins at Sisters, the terminus of both US 20 and Oregon 242. This small town with a western flair features many antique shops, art galleries, and other businesses, perfect for an afternoon's browsing. And for a good night's sleep, Many resorts, cabins, and camping facilities are available in the Sisters area. Something for every taste and budget. Don't be surprised to see llamas grazing on the ranches that dot the surrounding countryside. These gentle yet sturdy beasts are popular pack animals for wilderness tours. Framed by the Cascades and located on a wide curve of the Deschutes River is Bend, Central Oregon's largest city. Pioneers called this place Farewell Bend, a comforting oasis on their way to northeastern Oregon. Today, Bend is the center of Central Oregon's fabulous outdoor recreational paradise. The Cascade Lakes Highway, just west of town, offers a 100-mile scenic loop through some of Oregon's most beautiful country. High mountain peaks are constantly in view, and some of the best boating, fishing, camping, and hiking in the state are found here. Central Oregon is also a land with an active geological past. The Oregon Cascades are actually a chain of volcanoes, some erupting quite recently. At Lava Lands along US 97, just south of Bend, a visitor center contains exhibits on the volcanic features of the landscape. Lava flows, cinder cones, underground lava tubes, and other details of this region's fiery past are entertainingly and educationally presented. Outside, a paved trail roams through a lava field, and a road climbs to the summit of Lava Butte. This 500-foot cinder cone provides a sweeping 360-degree view of the surrounding terrain and lava flows. Further south along US 97 and east on a Forest Service road lies the lava-cast forest. Erupting Cascade volcanoes once sent molten lava into this pine forest, engulfing it completely. The trees died, of course, but they left their imprints behind in a series of both vertical and horizontal lava casts. So complete was the process that the imprint of tree bark in some of the casts is still visible in this forest preserved in stone. East on US 97 lies the source of much of the lava that inundates Central Oregon, the remnant of ancient Mount Newberry. Mount Newberry was massive, about 12,000 feet high and 25 miles in diameter. As lava drained through its faults and fissures, the walls supporting the mountain collapsed, leaving a huge crater. Today, that crater encloses Paulina and East Lakes, a popular destination for campers and anglers alike. Here, a half-mile trail ranges through one of the largest obsidian flows in the world. This hard, black volcanic glass was used by native Indians for centuries to fashion incredibly sharp arrowheads, spear points, and other cutting tools. A drive to 8,000-foot Paulina Peak, the summit of the collapsed volcano, results in a spectacular view of the crater and its lakes, the Cascade Range, and the high desert plateau of eastern Oregon. Through the juniper and sagebrush of this plateau runs the Crooked River, aptly named for its twisting, serpentine course that is cut through layers of lava and centuries of sedimentation. This is more than apparent at Smith Rock State Park near Redmond, Oregon. These dramatic and colorful rock formations rise up from the surrounding terrain like a scene from a fantasy story and dominate the landscape for miles around. Another striking section of the Crooked River Gorge is located at Ogden's Scenic Wayside off US 97 just north of Redmond. Named after Peter Skeen Ogden, a Hudson Bay Company trader who explored this region in 1825, this day-use and picnic area features easily accessible walkways that lead to breathtaking viewpoints high above the deep, narrow chasm. North of Redmond, the Madras area offers another byproduct of the volcanic heritage of Central Oregon: semi-precious gemstones. Here, rockhounds can dig for such treasures as agates, petrified wood, jasper, obsidian, and thunder eggs, the state rock of Oregon. Northwest of Madras lies the Warm Springs Indian Reservation and Canada Resort, a multi-million-dollar complex owned and operated by the Confederated Tribes. Here one can sleep in a teepee along the bubbling Warm Springs River, stay in an Indian cottage called a nisha, or relax at a modern lodge surrounded by Indian art. Kanita has all the traditional activities expected at a resort. Swim in a pool fed by natural hot springs, play golf, tennis, go for a horseback ride, fish or hike. But here there's also the unexpected: Indian storytelling, dances, crafts, and outdoor salmon roasts. Native Americans have lived in Oregon for more than 10,000 years. Originally, there were more than 50 tribes and bands speaking about 25 different languages. With names like Klamath, Chinook, Multnomah and Siuslaw, Molalla, Umpqua, Umatilla and Nez Perce, about 45,000 people in all before the white man entered the picture. The land and its bounty were the basis for their way of life, and the variety of Oregon's terrain was reflected in their culture. And what a culture it was. Language, art, philosophy, and medicine were all highly developed among the Oregon tribes. Accordingly, the land had a deep spiritual meaning for most Oregon Indians, and it still does to this day. It can be felt and seen here at Kanita. The beginning of the end for the Northwest Indian occurred back in the spring of 1841. For it was then that the first wagon train of 69 pioneers pulled out of Independence, Missouri, and headed west. Year after year, their numbers increased, long caravans snaking their way across the Great Plains, over the Rockies and onto the Oregon Territory, the Promised Land, Indian Land. By the late 1890s, an estimated 350,000 pioneers had made the trip, about the population of present-day Portland. The Northwest tribes were simply outnumbered. Today, there is still evidence of this western migration along Interstate 84 in northeastern Oregon. Many wayside stops and interpretive pullouts depict what life was like on the trail, and the ruts carved by thousands of narrow-wheeled, heavily laden wagons remained etched across the face of the state, a silent reminder of the birth of new beginnings and the death of the old ways. At Pendleton, the center of Oregon's wheat-producing region, the old and the new, the red and the white, come together each year during the Pendleton Roundup. Some of the nation's finest rodeo performers compete in a variety of traditional events. While Native Americans from throughout the Northwest set up a teepee village along the Umatilla River and host some events of their own. Besides the Roundup, Pendleton is also home to the original Pendleton Woolen Mill, which is open to the public for regularly scheduled tours. The modern cooperation between the white man and the Native American can also be seen here, for Pendleton's initial success came from supplying colorful ceremonial blankets to the Indians, something it still produces today. Earlier on, of course, all was not peaceful between the white man and Indian. The inevitable clash of cultures led to much bloodshed. In Joseph, Oregon, gateway to the Wallowa Mountains, the last great American Indian War of 1877 is remembered. Young Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce tribe, in a dispute over tribal lands, led his people on a heroic 1,700-mile journey. Many battles were fought along the way in which the Nez Perce warriors defeated numerically superior American military troops. But just as they were about to cross over to sanctuary at the Canadian border, they were overwhelmed and surrendered.
Where the sun now stands on this golden land, I will fight no more forever. Where the sun now stands on this golden land, I will fight no more forever.
The Wallowa Mountains, ancestral home to the Nez Perce, have been called the Switzerland of America for their breathtaking alpine scenery. Here, the adventurers come to hike, backpack, fish, and camp in true wilderness areas like the Eagle Cap Wilderness. A little tamer, but no less magnificent, is Wallowa Lake. Scooped out by glaciers during the last ice age, its deep, clear waters are open to boating, water skiing, swimming, and fishing. A resort area and state park are tucked away at the south end of the lake. Perhaps the most famous attraction at Wallowa Lake is the gondola ride to the summit of Mount Howard. At 8,250 feet, it offers an exceptional view of the rugged peaks and canyons of the region. The largest of these canyons is also the deepest gorge on the continent, Hell's Canyon. This 40-mile-long natural boundary between Idaho and Oregon is a mile deep in portions, 1,000 feet deeper than the Grand Canyon. At the bottom, like a silver serpent, the Snake River continues to carve away layer after layer, as it has done for centuries. The discovery of gold in 1861 lured thousands of miners to the northeastern part of the state and helped settle it. By the spring of 1862, Oregon had a full-blown case of gold fever. Boomtowns sprang up almost overnight with names like Auburn, Sumter, Bonanza, Greenhorn, and Granite. Oregon Route 7 travels deep into the historic Sumter Valley Mining District, where today visitors can get a first-hand look at these ghosts of the past. "30 million years ago, the area around John Day, Oregon, was a vast subtropical forest. It was inhabited by such creatures as saber-toothed cats, giant pigs, and three-toed horses. When the volcanoes erupted, these animals were forever sealed in rock. At the headquarters of the John Day Fossil Beds National Monument, fossils are displayed from what is considered to be one of the richest deposits of prehistoric animal remains in the world. These ancient lands are also colorful lands, as the nearby painted hills attest. Dome-shaped mounds and ridges are banded with colors that vary with changing light. From sunup to sunset, it's an ever-changing program with hues of rust, pink, buff, green, gold, and gray. Nature's own light show and a photographer's paradise. Southeastern Oregon is a land of wide open spaces, few highways, and sparsely populated towns. A land of bone-dry deserts and huge, shallow lakes. A land of eerie beauty, empty, vast, silent. Well, silent most of the time. Twice a year in the spring and fall, great flocks of migratory birds pass along the Pacific Flyway on their annual pilgrimage. At Malheur Lake near Burns, Oregon, and at 6 other national wildlife refuges in southeastern Oregon, they are readily observable. It's a birdwatcher's delight. Over 250 species have been sighted. Southeast of Malheur Lake, rising up unexpectedly from the surrounding landscape, is impressive Steens Mountain. From the town of French Glen, the Summit Road Loop rises from the arid terrain and transports one to a land of refreshing alpine meadows and lakes, aspen groves, and trout-filled streams. Further east, near the town of Ontario, Oregon, lies an area that many describe as a small version of the Grand Canyon. Owyhee Canyonland is a spectacular red rock region, cut through by the Owyhee River and studded with rock spires, balanced rocks, multicolored formations, and sheer rock walls. Southern Oregon offers something for everyone, from world-class trout fishing to Shakespearean drama, beautiful mountaintop scenery to subterranean wonders. Dominating the attractions in Southern Oregon is Crater Lake National Park. Brilliantly blue Crater Lake was formed about 7,000 years ago when ancient Mount Mazama erupted and then collapsed, forming a huge bowl more than 6 miles across and 4,000 feet deep. Over the centuries, rain and melting snow accumulated inside the caldera, forming the lake. Today, rain and snow continue to be the only source of Crater Lake's water. Water so pure, it supports little life. At 1,932 feet, Crater Lake is the deepest lake in the United States. The 33-mile rim drive around the lake offers many pullouts, scenic viewpoints, and nature trails. A boat trip on the lake usually includes a park naturalist interpreting the area's many geological features, plus a stopover at Wizard Island, a volcanic cinder cone of more recent origin rising from the lake bottom. Rhinos in Oregon? As they say in these parts, you betcha. Along the South Fork of the Umpqua River near Roseburg is a 600-acre game reserve where over 650 exotic animals roam free. At Wildlife Safari, you are in the cage, your car. Southwest of Roseburg and the Rogue River, deep within the Siskiyou Mountains, is a secret place. A place of mystery and otherworld beauty. A place that American poet Joaquin Miller called the Marble Halls of Oregon. Today, it's better known as the Oregon Caves National Monument. Guided tours through the chamber of this spectacular underground cavern reveal beautiful white, buff, and gray-colored rock formations covering the walls, ceiling, and floor. Back on the top side at Medford, Southern Oregon's largest city, pear and other fruit orchards abound. Spring blossoms blanket the valley in a thick sea of flowers, while in summertime, fresh produce stands and you-pick orchards invite the traveler to sample the sweet bounty of nature. Just west of Medford is a relic of the Southern Oregon Gold Rush, Jacksonville. This entire town, with its restored wood and brick structures, enjoys National Historic Landmark status. Walking these historic streets and peeking into buildings, one can almost feel the lusty atmosphere that once pervaded this boomtown. Traveling a short distance south, one is transported even further into the past, all the way back to 17th century England. For Ashland, Oregon is the home of one of the country's most respected Shakespearean festivals. From late February through October, a full season of performances takes place at the outdoor Elizabethan stage, patterned after the Fortune Theatre of 17th century London. Here, costumed dancers and strolling troubadours perform in the courtyard before each performance, adding to the festive atmosphere of this charming town. At Ashland, the play's the thing. But the emphasis isn't totally on the bard. Other shows, both classic and contemporary, are also performed during the long season, making Ashland a true theatergoer's delight.
Sure, this is his larynx. Gentlemen,
The Oregon coast is perhaps the most famous attraction of the state, and for good reason. For besides containing some of the world's most beautiful ocean scenery, it is also uniquely approachable. In fact, nearly the entire 400 miles of Oregon's coastline is publicly owned. In theory, one could walk from one end of the state to the other entirely on the beach. And although there are broad beaches that seem to stretch on forever, the protruding headlands, craggy coves, and constantly shifting tides would make such a trek impossible. But access to most of this seaside splendor is available via US 101, which parallels the Oregon coast along its entire length. Never far from the call of the pounding surf, the cry of the gull. On the southern Oregon coast, just 10 miles from the California border, is the town of Brookings, offering the most consistently pleasant weather along the coast. The Brookings area is also home to some of its most spectacular, wild, and rugged scenery. Central to this marine grandeur is Samuel H. Boardman State Park. This 10-mile-long oceanside strip contains 3 major picnic areas which provide access to dazzling viewpoints. A little further up the coast at Gold Beach, the Rogue River ends its 215-mile journey from the Cascade Peaks, where it becomes one with the Pacific. But many adventures begin here by discovering the many moods of this federally designated wild and scenic river. Whether it's hiking along the banks, paddling a canoe, kayak, or raft, or skimming over the waters on one of the popular jet boat tours, the Lower Rogue rewards with its unceasing beauty, unique geological features, and abundance of wildlife. Among the many sea stack and rock formations that proliferate along the southern Oregon coast, Face Rock stands out. This somber visage oversees a veritable gallery of natural sculptures looming high over a flat, sandy beach. Other sentinels also guard the craggy Oregon coast, lighthouses. Today, many of these 19th century structures are still shining through the night, while others have been replaced by less enchanting, but perhaps more utilitarian devices. Yet this proves a boon to the curious, for some of these out-of-service lighthouses have been restored and are open for closer inspection. The twin cities of North Bend and Coos Bay separate the rugged south coast from the smooth dunes of the central Oregon coast. The best natural deep-water port between Puget Sound and San Francisco, Coos Bay is a busy commercial waterway. To the north of Coos Bay and extending up the coast for some 40 miles is the expansive Oregon Dunes National Recreation Area. These hills and valleys of endlessly shifting sands reach inland for 1 to 3 miles and rise upward to 300 feet. It's an ideal environment for camel travel or for transportation of quite another sort. Oregon's coast is constantly being pummeled and sculptured by the relentless sea. Near Heceta Head and Cape Perpetua, just north of Florence, lies an unusual result of this activity, the Devil's Churn. Here, the persistent waves have found a soft vein of rock in the coastal headlands and carved out a long, narrow chasm. Many creatures of the sea have long carved out an existence along the Oregon coast. The isolated rock formations rising up just offshore are often sanctuaries and nesting grounds for all varieties of shorebirds and sea mammals. Sea Lion Caves provides a unique opportunity for a close-up look at some of these year-round residents. Descending by elevator into a huge natural grotto, the bulls and cows can be seen acting as they have for centuries, raising their pups amid barking chatter, protected from the stormy sea. Storms occur quite frequently along the Oregon coast, presenting a spectacular show. Nature is at her tempestuous best during these displays of raw fury, whipping wind, water, sand, and rocks into a frothing frenzy. Just after a storm at low tide is the best time to beachcomb for shells, agates, sand dollars, driftwood, and the real prize, glass floats torn loose from the nets of Japanese fishermen thousands of miles to the west. For those who seek more edible treasures, the opportunities that exist along the Oregon coast are extensive indeed. At Newport, one can charter a boat for deep-sea fishing or simply cast a line from shore or jetty. Such species as salmon, steelhead, rockfish, flounder, and other finny denizens are readily taken. If shopping or dining has more appeal than fishing, both can be combined at Newport's historic Old Town. This commercial fishing area features quaint shops, restaurants, and fish markets sprinkled among the canneries and processing plants. If it's fresh, it's here at Newport. The Central Oregon coast is a vast playground with many resort complexes catering to the frolicsome free spirit in us all. It's a place to relax, to forget about daily concerns, and just have some good, clean fun. Although the waters of the North Pacific are usually quite chilly, on warm summer days, they can be most refreshing indeed. North of Newport, the Otter Crest Loop swings off Highway 101 and winds through dense forests, offering occasional peaks at the magnificent Pacific far below. At the northern terminus of the loop is Cape Foulweather. Discovered by Captain James Cook in 1778, it was appropriately named, for wind gusts here have been clocked at over 100 miles per hour. In less violent weather, an observation point offers a stunning vista of the broad expanse of the Pacific and mile after mile of undulating coastline. At Depot Bay, home of the world's smallest harbor, keep an eye peeled for some inspiring ocean dwellers, whales. Spring and fall migrations of the California gray whale bring these aquatic giants quite close to the shoreline. But for an even closer look, join one of the many whale-watching boat expeditions available at Depot Bay and at ports all along the coast. At busy Lincoln City, browse through the many gift shops and antique stores, or simply head for the beach and fly a kite in the steady ocean breeze. After Lincoln City, Highway 101 turns inland and meanders through rich pasture lands where herds of dairy cows graze contentedly. This marks the beginning of the northern portion of the Oregon coast and the way to Tillamook, cheese capital of the West Coast. But cheese isn't the only product of the North Oregon coast. The pristine beauty and relative isolation of the area attracts artists of every discipline. Many galleries, workshops, and studios dot the back roads and towns of the region, Cannon Beach being a prime example. A not too uncommon rainy day on this stretch of the coast presents an ideal opportunity to seek out and appreciate the work of Oregon artists and craftspeople, art as diverse as the landscape that surrounds them. At Cannon Beach, the landscape is dominated by huge haystack rock. The rocky beach surrounding this monolith is a prime location for a favorite seaside activity, exploring tide pools. Every day at low tide, the ocean rolls back her watery veil and reveals her treasures. Colorful starfish, tiny crabs, sea anemone, mussels, and other intertidal life forms inhabit these craggy transitional zones between open sea and beach. And they will continue to thrive if all who come to observe also observe the strict regulations prohibiting their removal. At the northern tip of the Oregon coast lies Astoria. In 1811, the first permanent American settlement on the Pacific. Named after the wealthy New York merchant John Jacob Astor, Astoria was once a city of great wealth and power that rivaled San Francisco, as many of its ornate Victorian homes attest. Today, Astoria is a thriving seaport with a firm sense of history, for it was here, at the mouth of the mighty Columbia River, that the Spaniard Bruno Heceta first encountered this territory in the 16th century. He was followed by others whose names populate our history books and our legends. Captains Gray, Cook, Vancouver, and perhaps most famous of all, Lewis and Clark. At Fort Clatsop, now reconstructed a few miles southwest of Astoria, Lewis and Clark ended their epic cross-country trek in 1806. It was an expedition that for the first time surveyed the vast natural resources of this huge territory. A journey that strengthened Americans' claim to it and opened up the land for the many that were to follow. Just north of Fort Stevens, established to guard the mouth of the Columbia River from Confederate troops during the Civil War, is another piece of maritime history, the wreck of the Peter Iredale. This four-masted British merchant ship was driven aground in high winds in 1906. It's just one of the more than 200 shipwrecks that have occurred near the treacherous mouth of the Columbia, sometimes referred to as the graveyard of the Pacific. All this history is best summed up at Astoria Column on Coxcomb Hill, high above the city. A commemorative mural celebrates the historical events of the region, while a climb up the column's 166 spiraling steps offers a sweeping view of the surrounding area. The Oregon coast is like a quick change artist. From high tide to low, stormy weather to dazzling sunshine, clinging mists to driving rains, at once mysterious and obvious, benevolent and menacing, it dons its many costumes and sings its ancient melody to all who would listen. At the confluence of the Columbia and Willamette Rivers, about 100 miles inland from the coast, is the center of Oregon's population, Portland, once referred to as the biggest small town in America. Metro Portland today, at over 1.3 million people, is one of the largest cities on the West Coast. Yet with its friendly populace, a clean, well-scrubbed appearance, and 160-plus parks, it's easy to feel at home here. Downtown Portland, through intelligent planning and a committed populace, adeptly blends the old with the new, the fanciful with the utilitarian. Beautifully restored late 19th century structures contrast and blend with award-winning 20th century designs. An abundance of public art, fountains and parks, wide pedestrian promenades, even a central town square all serve to keep things in a uniquely Oregonian focus. One scale to and emphasizing people. It's a spirit that can be felt while strolling along the waterfront, crossing one of the many bridges, riding an antique carousel, the modern light rail, or simply participating in one of the ongoing celebrations at various public gatherings, performances, and markets. In the West Hills above the downtown core, there's more to explore. Washington Park sprawls across hillsides, dips into fine old neighborhoods, and stretches into forested expanses, eventually connecting with a massive 5,000-acre forest park and its 30 miles of hiking trails. The Washington Park Zoo is internationally recognized for its major exhibits that feature animals in their native habitats. Just across from the zoo is the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, or OMSI, where many fascinating hands-on exhibits demonstrate principles of science. Traditional principles of bonsai and other oriental gardening techniques are showcased at the exotic Japanese gardens, also located in Washington Park. Here, cultivated trees, carefully manicured shrubbery, gently splashing water, and oriental structures form a serene place of beauty and reflection. But the most famous gardens in Portland's Washington Park are the International Rose Test Gardens. On a prime 4.5-acre terraced hillside overlooking the city, more than 10,000 rose bushes are planted representing over 400 varieties of the noble bramble. Each year in early June, these gardens become the center of attention for the entire city as Portland hosts the annual Rose Festival. This 2-week celebration features the coronation of a Rose Queen, a rose show, a festival of bands, a fleet of ships, sports competitions, and many other activities and events, all culminating in the famed Grand Floral Parade. Portland, city of roses, bridges, parks, and people. Flanking Oregon's northern border and dividing it from the state of Washington is the mighty Columbia River. And just northeast of Portland begins a portion of the Columbia known in these parts as simply the Gorge. Over the eons, the Columbia River has cut through the volcanic rock of the Cascades and along with glacial activity has formed steep cliffs and strange rock formations, beautiful waterfalls and verdant forests. 30 million years of geologic history are visible on the walls of the gorge in layer after layer of sandstone and basalt. Access to this area of uncommon beauty and surprising mystery is available via Interstate 84, or for a more leisurely tour, the Columbia Gorge Scenic Highway. Built between 1913 and 1915, the Gorge Highway was the first paved road through the Oregon Cascades. It was a marvel of its time and remains so today. Known as the King of Roads and called a poem in stone, it was dedicated here at Crown Point on June 6, 1916. After Crown Point, the road hugs the side of the cliff high above the Columbia and winds through thick forests and past wildflower-filled meadows, crossing bubbling streams and passing by tumbling waterfalls. The most impressive of these falls and the highest in Oregon is 620-foot Multnomah Falls. A trail leads to a footbridge spanning the lower falls, then continues to a high vantage point at the top of the falls. Shortly after Multnomah Falls, the scenic highway reconnects with Interstate 84, which continues on toward the oldest dam on the Columbia, Bonneville. Built between 1933 and 1943 by the Army Corps of Engineers, Bonneville made the Columbia navigable by raising the water level, eliminating rapids, and providing a series of locks. But others argue that it forever changed the character of the river, eradicating traditional Indian fishing grounds and decimating native salmon runs. At the Visitor Center, many interpretive exhibits relate the navigational history of the Columbia, the dam's operation, and the story of fish migration. Through underwater glass viewing windows, fish can be seen making their way up the ladders. At the dam's navigational locks, barges and other river traffic pass through the series of locks in an endless parade up and down the river. The Columbia River Gorge offers many opportunities for traditional recreation, from boating to fishing, rock climbing to hiking. But at Hood River, there's something new, something different, something wild: windsurfing. Hood River attracts windsurfing aficionados from around the world for major competitions. This section of the gorge is tailor-made for this exciting sport due to the reliable winds that push through all summer long. Traveling south along Highway 35 through the fruitful orchards of the Hood River Valley, there is still evidence of the old Barlow Road. This was the pioneers' alternate route to the fertile Willamette Valley, bypassing the faster but more dangerous and expensive boat trip down the Columbia. Oregon's crown jewel, 11,235-foot Mount Hood, must have filled those early travelers with a sense of both beauty and awe. Today, it's a symbol of the state and an invitation to alpine enjoyment. Surrounded by over 1 million acres of national forest, this recreational paradise offers plenty of space for hiking, fishing, camping, and boating. In addition to being the second most often climbed peak in the world, Mount Hood is also open for skiing year-round. The center of all this up and downhill activity is Timberline Lodge. Built in the early 30s as a WPA project, this National Historic Landmark represents the vision of many dedicated Oregonians. The earthiness of its massive timbers and huge hexagonal stone fireplace is counterpointed by intricate mosaics, elaborate wood carvings, and grand painted murals. Each piece of furniture, every lamp and lampshade, even the hinges and the doors were crafted by hand specifically for the lodge. It remains today as it was at its dedication by President Franklin Roosevelt, a monument to the skill, the artistry, the love of a group of determined and talented individuals. An overnight stay at Timberline is a very special experience. After the hiking, the mountain climbing, the fishing, or the skiing, a stop at Brighton Bush Hot Springs, also located in the Mount Hood National Forest, is in order. At this secluded retreat, relax and soak away the aches and pains in natural hot springs while reflecting on lush green valleys and high mountain peaks, tranquil azure lakes and rushing rivers and streams. Remember the dry desert plateau and misty ocean vistas, the deep, narrow gorges and the soft sweep of dunes. Recall the clean, unrushed cities and friendly, gracious natives. The dark volcanic past and bright, promising future of Oregon, state of wonder.